Coasters get moved around for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes their parks close down and they need a new home. Sometimes they outlive their welcome and the park wants to move on with something new. Sometimes the park has a plan in place to rotate its rides around as a cheap way to get new experiences into new markets. All of these coasters have a story. Every single one has traveled a long way. And today, I want to look at the best of the best that have operated at different parks, as well as the worst of the worst. These are the best and worst relocated coasters in America. I want to say up front that I'm not including coasters that were relocated, but have since closed down for good. This omits some very good and very bad coasters, including Firehawk at Kings Island and Flashback at Magic Mountain. I also chose to limit this to America, since I didn't think it was all that possible to find every relocated coaster around the world. So you won't see Vietnam's Dragon Run on this list, the coaster formerly known as Led Zeppelin the Ride and Time Machine. Of the 45 coasters I considered, most were pretty average, with just a handful standing out as really good or really bad. Let's start with the honorable mentions. Silver Bullet at Frontier City started off at the State Fair of Texas in 1980, before moving to Jolly Roger Amusement Park in Maryland for 2 years, and then found its home in Oklahoma City. This is its 36th year at the park, arguably the best coaster in the park, still running as smooth as ever. Another similar model is Colossus the Fire Dragon at Lagoon, one of the most loved coasters at the park, getting its start on the German fair circuit before moving to Utah in 1983, where it's still going strong. In the same park, Jetstar 2 debuted at the 1974 World's Fair in Spokane, Washington, before being moved in 1976, where it's been ever since. La Vibora at Six Flags Over Texas, and Alpine Bobsled at Great Escape opened at Magic Mountain and Great Adventure in 1984, in honor of the Sarajevo Winter Olympics, but were never meant to stay at those parks. The ride rotation program that Six Flags used in the 80s included these rides, and Over Texas ended up with what is now known as La Vibora in 1986, and Alpine Bobsled ended up at Great Escape in 1998. After a 6-year stint at Six Flags Great America as Rolling Thunder. Goliath at Six Flags Fiesta Texas only got to enjoy parts of 3 seasons at its original park, Six Flags New Orleans, before the park was closed forever following Hurricane Katrina. It was salvaged from the flood and made its way west to San Antonio in 2008. Finally, Possessed at Dorney Park is your standard intimate impulse, but this one was part of a huge expansion at Six Flags Ohio back in 2000, opening as Superman Ultimate Escape. It was renamed Steel Venom when Cedar Fair took over, and then they moved it out of the park 1 year before it closed for good. Let's get into the official list. Number 10. Wild One at Six Flags America. People who are familiar with Wild World, or Adventure World, now known as Six Flags America, may remember when this was built back in 1986. You may not be aware just how far this coaster's history goes back. Its original home was at Paragon Park in Massachusetts, where it operated from 1917 to 1985 when the park closed. It's surprising that this coaster is in its 105th season and had to be dismantled and rebuilt because it's a really solid ride. I last rode this in 2019 and I thought it ran very smooth. A really good basic out and back layout with a Helix finale. Definitely one of the better coasters at Six Flags America. Number 9. Green Lantern at Six Flags Great Adventure. When this first opened at Kentucky Kingdom, it was a big deal. It was called Chang, and it came right between the other 2 big stand-up coasters in America, Mantis at Cedar Point and Riddler's Revenge at Magic Mountain. Premier Parks acquired Kentucky Kingdom later on that year, and it became a Six Flags park the year after. When Six Flags failed to reach a lease agreement with the State Fair Board in 2010, the park was shut down, and some of the rides were relocated. Chang was one of them. Great Adventure removed his 21-year-old Aero Looper, Great American Scream Machine, and made room for this B&M stand-up, named after the Green Lantern film coming out in the summer of 2011. I know this gets a lot of hate, but I really enjoyed it. Even though it's a stand-up, I think it's every bit as enjoyable as Riddler's Revenge. It's big, intense, packs in 5 inversions over 4,000 feet of track. I think it's a top 10 relocated coaster in the country. Number 8. Skyliner at Lakemont Park. This is one of 3 coasters on the list that I've never ridden, but from what I've heard, this deserves a spot. It started out at Roseland Park in New York in 1960, where it had a good 25-year run until the park closed down. Lakemont Park in Altoona, Pennsylvania snatched it up and reopened it for the 1987 season. Lakemont has had problems of its own, so if you want to ride this John C. Allen Woody, it'd be a good idea to go soon. This has an L-shaped layout, and apparently can run a little rough in the back, but the airtime in the back is why it's on this list, throwing you into the buzz bar. I've never found the time to make it to Lakemont, but I hope to do it soon. I want to ride this, as well as the world's oldest operating coaster, Leap the Dips. Number 7. Sidewinder at Elitch Gardens, and Diamondback at Frontier City. These aero shuttle loops are the last of their kind in America, but they're well traveled. Sidewinder started off at Magic Springs in Arkansas as Roaring Tornado in 1980, where it lasted 9 years before being shipped off to Elitch Gardens in Denver. This, of course, is the old Elitch Gardens that dated back to 1890, and it was there from 1990 until the park closed down to move to another location in Denver in 1995. Sidewinder made the move with the park, and is still going strong today. Diamondback started its life at Six Flags Great Adventure in 1978, where it was part of a pair of shuttle coasters with interlocking loops. Together, they were Lightning Loops, and they stopped operating in 1986, but still sat there dormant for 5 years before they were separated. The upper track went to Six Flags America for 5 years, before being scrapped to make room for Two-Face the Flip Side. The lower track went to Frontier City, and has been there since 1993. An electric winch launch pushes the train off a platform, into a loop, and then up to another platform where it does it all backwards. This is intense, and provides a great pop of airtime. There used to be a lot more of these in operation, but they've been dropping like flies over the last couple decades. They are great, unique rides, even if they're simple. Number 6. Blue Hawk at Six Flags Over Georgia. This Vekoma looper was originally on the Jersey Shore, at a place called Dinosaur Beach, and went by the name Kamikaze. It only operated for 3 years, between 1989 and 1991, before closing and being shipped south to Six Flags Over Georgia as Ninja. Other than being the destination coaster for the Griswold family in the 2015 film Vacation, Ninja was seen as an awful ride because it was so rough. But in 2016, the ride got an overhaul with new trains, replacing the hard restraints with vest restraints, and I got to ride it with these new modifications, and I thought it was great. Unique elements, ran butter smooth, great head choppers. It makes me think that a lot of old and rough Vekoma or Aero loopers could use this overhaul. As for Dinosaur Beach, it was sold to Maurice Piers in 1999. Number 5. Comet at Great Escape. This PTC wooden coaster is usually what people think of as the best coaster at Great Escape, but it didn't get its start there. It goes all the way back to 1948 at Crystal Beach in Ontario, Canada, until the park closed its gates in 1989. It was sold to Great Escape, but was in storage at Fantasy Island for a few years, before finally being shipped the rest of the way to Great Escape. It finally opened in 1994. I've never ridden this one either, but it has an impressive track length, exceeding 4,000 feet, and apparently it has great airtime. This old relocated Woody is the biggest reason for people to come to upstate New York and visit Great Escape. Number 4. American Dryer Looping at Indiana Beach. This triple looping Schwarzkopf has quite the history, about to debut in its 5th location in 2021. It started on the German Fair Circuit in 1985, before being sold to Sunway Lagoon in Malaysia, where it operated between 1997 and 1999, before being sold to Flamingo Land in the UK, and reopened in 2000 as Magnum Force, serving 6 years before being shipped to Mexico, reopening at La Feria as Chimera in 2007, where it gained a reputation for being one of the most intense coasters in the world. Some people say this is because of the way La Feria was running it, but in 2019, a tragic accident caused the coaster and the park to close. Indiana Beach bought the coaster, its 5th home in its 5th country, and they're prepping it to open this year. The name, American Dryer Looping, is a throwback to its name on the German Fair Circuit. Dryer Looping means triple loop. Number 3. Aftershock at Silverwood. This was one of the 3 Vekoma giant inverted boomerangs that Six Flags introduced in 2001, this one being the one at Six Flags Great America. None of them lasted more than 10 years at their parks, before being relocated or sold off, with Silverwood jumping on the chance to get a used one back in 2008, standing nearly 200 feet tall, with those awesome looking vertical spikes, trains hanging under the track. This is a fast and intense experience. Unlike the other boomerang models, these are usually praised among coaster critics, and I would agree. This was my favorite ride at Silverwood after my visit in 2019, and it brought back fond memories of Deja Vu at Magic Mountain, which we'll talk about a little later on in this video. Number 2. Dominator at King's Dominion. We talked about Superman Ultimate Flight being part of a massive expansion at Six Flags Ohio in 2000. Another piece of that puzzle was Batman Night Flight, the world's longest B&M floorless, suddenly becoming the headline attraction at this park. Six Flags sold the park to Cedar Fair in 2004, and it was renamed Dominator when the park was named back to Geauga Lake, and this operated until the final day of Geauga Lake's 118-year run. Cedar Fair saw the chance to harvest some of the best rides from Geauga Lake and spread them around to its other parks, and King's Dominion got one of the big prizes. Dominator was plopped into the parking lot in 2008 and greets everyone coming into the park. This is one of the better floorless coasters in the country, with 5 inversions, over 4,200 feet of track, and it does a lot for the park's lineup. Before we get to number 1, let's go over the 5 relocated coasters that I think would have been better off on the scrap heap. Number 5. Arkansas Twister at Magic Springs. This started its life at Florida's Circus World Showcase, later renamed Boardwalk and Baseball in 1978, as a basic out-and-back wooden coaster. It went through multiple names, including Michael Jackson's Thrill Coaster, Roaring Tiger, and eventually Florida Hurricane. It closed down with the park in 1990, and Magic Springs snatched it up for a cheap price of $10,000, though they would spend about 90 times that amount to move it and rebuild it. Still, not an overly expensive investment for a major coaster. I've never ridden this, but the park is only 4 hours from me, so I'll get on it this year. But everyone seems to hate this ride. Rough and boring isn't a good combination, but I'll give it a fair shake soon enough. Until then, I'll rank it based on its reputation. Number 4. Goliath at Six Flags New England. Just like Aftershock, this is a relocation of one of the original Deja Vus across 3 Six Flags parks in 2001. This one came from Magic Mountain, which lasted the longest of the 3, operating in the corner of the park from 2001 to 2011. Six Flags made the decision to move this all the way across the country, from California to Massachusetts, putting it right next to their existing Boomerang, and open it for the 2012 season. So why is this on the worst list, while Aftershock was high on the best list? That's because Aftershock uses the original Vekoma trains, and Goliath uses new 4-across trains by Premier Rides, and those are an absolute train wreck. It makes the ride unbearably rough, and on top of that, it seems like this thing is down most of the time. I don't think anyone would be sad if this was relocated again. To where? Doesn't matter, though better trains may be able to save it. Number 3. Ninja at Six Flags St. Louis. This was supposed to be an aerodynamics project for Vancouver's Expo 86, but they fell into bankruptcy, and Vekoma had to finish it. It opened as Scream Machine and served its purpose, operating for 5 months in 1986, and then went up for sale. Six Flags Over Mid-America, later renamed Six Flags St. Louis, was the lucky recipient, and they moved it and rebuilt it for the 1989 season as Ninja. This weird Aero-Vekoma hybrid, combined with a relocation effort, didn't seem to work out all that well, as this is one of the more jerky, janky, and painful looping coasters I've ever ridden. This ride always tops a list about rides that may be on their last leg, and I think the park should part with it and get something better. Number 2. Vipère at La Ronde. Opening at Six Flags Magic Mountain as Green Lantern First Flight in 2011, this coaster quickly became the bane of my existence. This terrible torture device was so violent and nasty that I swore off riding it ever again just a couple months before it shut down for good in 2017. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who despised it, and rumor had it that the park was being sued over an injury on the ride. That didn't surprise me at all. After sitting there for 2 years, Six Flags finally decided to move it to Quebec's La Ronde in 2020 and give it some new life. The only reason I have this at number 2 and not number 1 is because we haven't seen how it'll ride in this new park. The Intamin Zaxspin isn't a terrible model. The other Zaxspins out there seem to get good reviews. Apparently, California laws required the car to be a certain weight, and the car wouldn't spin when it was supposed to, causing unnatural forces on the body, which made it so bad. If they can fix this up in Canada, it may become a good ride. We'll see. Number 1. Swiss Toboggan at Little America. When you talk about the least redeeming coasters, Toboggan is right there at the top of the list. This opened at the Little Roadside Park in Marshall, Wisconsin in 1993, but it had 2 stops before that. It started out in the early 70s at Dogpatch Park, USA in Arkansas, as Earthquake Magoon's Brain Rattler. After being removed in 1988, it wound up at Enchanted Forest in Indiana, now called Toboggan after its model. Little America won a bidding war with Michigan's Adventure to buy the Toboggan after Enchanted Forest fell into bankruptcy, shelling out $30,000 for it. And for the last 28 years, this weird-looking coaster has been open on its current location, the only one of its kind still listed as operating in the world, with one coming to Brazil later this year. This was a popular model in the 1970s, with over 30 installations. But at this point, they're quirky and outdated. After a vertical lift, you spiral down a tower, picking up speed until hitting some small hills. And because you're crammed into that enclosed car, you have a great chance of hurting your neck at the peak of those hills, which I did. There's nothing fun about this ride, and it's the only ride to ever cause me a week's worth of pain afterward. Let's end this on a good note and reveal the best relocated coaster in America. Number 1. Phoenix at Knoebels. The wooden coaster that has won multiple Golden Ticket Awards checks in at the top spot, and it's not all that close. It opened in 1948 at Playland Park in San Antonio, built by PTC, and this was the only coaster the park ever had. But the park shut down 32 years later, in 1980. Knoebels bought the ride and moved it 1,700 miles to Ellisburg, Pennsylvania, rebuilt it based on numbers on each board, since there were no blueprints, and opened it in 1985. 36 years later, and it's fair to say that it was a huge success. Aside from its awards, it's a butter-smooth airtime machine, with some people saying it has some of the strongest airtime they've ever felt, with just the buzz bar keeping them in. It's the only relocated ride currently in my top 50, And I would be curious to see if anyone would disagree with Phoenix being number 1 here. But if you do, let me know what you would pick in the comments below. Maybe you're not a Phoenix fan. Maybe you got better airtime on Comet or Skyliner. Or maybe you're an Aftershock fan. I want to hear your thoughts, so make your case in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like, and subscribe if you're new here and love coaster content. And also check out my Discord server. That's the best way to talk to other fans of the channel. And also, take a look at my second channel. I made this one for other coaster YouTubers looking for copyright-free footage. All those links are down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.